Hi everyone, this is Susan Bossier and I'm here today to show you a collection of cards I made using the Graphic 45 Safari collection. Graphic 45 is such a great company when it comes to imagery. All of their collections have such an array of images to choose from, background papers to choose from, coordinating colors to choose from, that you can just make the most incredible cards. I'm going to start off with this card showing you this shadow box card. Now this is an easy card to make. It gives you that depth of field, and the great thing about it is you can fold it down to stick it in an envelope and send it to someone. I love interactive cards. This has an accordion pleat on each side that creates the depth, and then you can just fill it with any image you like. The birds, some of the other animals, flowers, and this collection has beautiful flowers. Another of my favorite cards that I made with this collection is this pop-up card. I just learned to make this card, this style of card, and it has just a very basic front using some of the images and a little bit of trim that I found. I like finding unusual things to use on my cards, and then when you open this card, it creates this incredible 3D effect using animals from the cut-aparts. So I used all the different animals that were available, some of the flowers, and then some of the structural parts here. And then when you close it, you have this nice flat card that you can also put in a larger envelope and send to a special someone. And then of course there are some simple cards. These are great because you have lots of leftover pieces, and you can make and create a basic card here. And like I said, here's another little embellishment I found. And I actually colored these. They were white to begin with, and I just used some alcohol ink markers and a couple of different colors of green and colored that and made it match my card. That's always a great way to use your alcohol ink markers. And here's another little one here using some of the bird images that I had left over, and then the outside of this is using one of the cut-apart frames. And Graphic 45 is famous for having all these great frames that you can use that I like. So today I'm going to show you how to make this Bendi card using the Graphic 45 Safari collection. And I love interactive cards, and this one is one of my favorites. I make these all the time. And to create the dimension, you're going to make these little tabs that fit into the slots. And this is your first layer. This is your second layer, and it too has a little tab. And you're going to open that up to the center. And then when you want to close it to send it, all you have to do is fold it over this way, fold it over this way, put it in an envelope, and send it along. So to start with, I want to show you this paper from Graphic 45. This is their focal sheet, and it is the 12 by 12. And I like using the 12 by 12s and deconstructing them to create my cards with. I like the larger format. It works really well with the larger size cards. This card that we're going to be making today is going to be, when it's folded, 6 by 7.5. And so these images fit perfectly for that. And let me show you how I did this. This is the little tiger, and I cut him out of right here. So you can see he's cut out. I did add some of the little flowers there. And then on the back of him, put this black cardstock because he hangs out over the edge, and I want to make sure that he stays intact. So that's him. And then I took these guys right out of here, these giraffes, little giraffe family, right out of there like that. So that's that piece. And the elephants are right here, and I just took them right out of there. And then I took this piece right from here. Now, I kept this piece when I was working as one whole piece, just to let you know, because I used it on another card, and it's nice to save it as one piece until you know what you want to do with it. Sometimes if you cut things apart too far, you don't get the effect that you want. And then I also took the two icon images out of the sides here, the hippo and the zebra. So those were the main pieces out of this paper. And Graphic 45 does do other cut apart pieces. And I wanted to show you that as well, and that's this piece here. And this is one of the frames that I talked about a little bit earlier, how I like using them. And it had this elephant that I cut out and this flower that I cut out. Notice that the frame is still in one piece, and the reason I kept it in one piece is I'm going to use it later on the card. So there's that piece there with our elephant and our flower, and then we have the main pieces of the card. Let me grab this real quick. This is my background, and like I said, it was 6 by 7.5 here. And then I have these two side pieces. So we have this piece that will connect over here to the side like that. And then we have this smaller one that will connect here. And that's where we're going to be having our dimension. It's going to fold over here like this with a tab on this side, fold over here like this with a tab on this side. And then we will also be decorating them with some of the coordinating papers. So I chose the leaf ones because I liked them better than the other side for this particular project. And so we're going to have ones that match both of the sizes of the arms that are going to fold over. That's those. Oh, hard to get up with my fingers there. And then there's also going to be some coordinating pieces. Now these pieces are cut from the strip piece paper that they have and the cut-aparts. Oh, upside down. Well, sorry. And so these are some of the decorative pieces that we'll be using. And I really enjoy mixing and matching. When you see the paper whole, sometimes it's a little intimidating because you think, what am I going to do with this? And tearing it apart and putting it back together in different ways is just a really fun way to use Graphic 45, I think. That's why I do a Graphic 45 class of the month every month using a different collection. And since we've got all our pieces now, we can get started. Okay, so we're going to start out with the back inside page because I like to start from back to front. And we're going to be putting on some of our pieces. Now, I purchased this paper at bluemoonscrapbooking.com. So there will be a link and references to where I got the paper and all of the dimensions in the description. So you can refer to that. But if you want to work along with me right now, because you have the paper, let's get started. So I'm going to put these two pieces on first. This is from the strip piece. And I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back. And this goes right at the bottom. So you're going to line it up right along the bottom edge there. And then we're going to be putting on the elephants. Now, I cut all of my pieces out ahead of time, so it would be easier to film this. But also, I used some brown ink and a sponge to ink the edges or distress the edges, whichever term you prefer. And I'm just going to put this on like this. Oops. Let's get that nice and lined up. There we go. Just like that. All right. Now, if it's a little too long, you can turn it over to the back and trim to fit there. And I want to talk a little bit about this piece here. This piece was from one of the cut-aparts, and I cut my elephant and my flower out as one, and then I have this piece left over, and I did ink around the edges, and like I said, I just took a little bit of ink and kind of kissed the edge there, and that just blends the paper, but it also gets rid of this white core edge that most papers have. Now, before I put this piece on, I wanted to attach this piece, and this piece was from the very top of the 12 by 12, and I'm going to put some adhesive right, let me get that started, on the edges here. And what I did was I connected it here, and I connected it here, And I just used a visual center. I didn't use a ruler to do this. So I just visually centered it. And then once you have it centered on there, let me get that a little bit nicer. Turn it over. And then I'm going to put a little bit more adhesive along these. Now, when you cut the elephant out, this area here is very delicate. And if you happen to snap one off, don't worry about it. You can just put it where it goes once you get it onto your background piece. One of these pieces in particular is pretty small. So I'm just going to put it here like this and attach it. And you see where I cut into the flower right here? That's going to be covered up. All of these little small pieces are going to be covered. And I want to make sure this looks really nice here. There we go. Okay. So we have that in place. And then, I'm not going to add the flower right now. I'm going to set that aside. Okay, so now I'm going to add the elephant. And I have just put some chipboard on the back of him. But you can use pop dots if you like. They also make the ones that have the black, so when you're using a black cardstock, it blends nicely. And we're just going to put him right back where he was. So he's just going to fit right in there. Move him over just a little here. There we go. And give him a little bit of dimension. Now the flower that we took out of here is eventually going to go down in this area. But we're not going to put that on right now. We're going to save that for later because we're going to be doing a couple of other steps before that is added. But what we can add is our little mommy and baby elephant. And those are just using regular adhesive. Just stick those down here. And that's going to cover this little area right here. So we're just going to stick them down in this area to cover where the flower came from. There. Now notice that this sticks out over the edge. We're just going to take our scissors, turn this over, and just trim to fit. So we've got that. And we have this side here. We're going to cut. You can just discard those two pieces. Now notice you have black up here. We're going to be cutting that later. I'm not going to cut it right now, because we're going to be adding another layer to the back of this, and it's just going to save you cutting time. So there's your first section with all the pieces that you're going to need except the flower and the embellishment that's going to go here. Now here's a little embellishment. You could add it now if you'd like. It's just a little piece. It started out as silver, and I took my alcohol ink markers and I colored the center red and the outside a gold color, just because it matched the paper nicer. And for that, you can just use your glue dots. And these are a little bit big, so I'm just going to cut one in half like that. Do this and peel it off. Okay. Here we go. These are very sticky. I'm going to stick it to the back of there and put it right in the center like that. And it just gives a nice little detail. I like those little details. All right, so now that you have your page finished, we have to consider where the tab will fit into the page. And that's where you're going to need your trimmer. All right, so here's my trimmer. This is kind of one of my favorite trimmers. I like this one because it's easy to use, and I like the see-through ruler part. So we're going to be fitting this into the trimmer, and we're going to create a slit about 1.25 inches from the very edge. So all I did was I put this in here using the flat edge of my trimmer, and let's see, where would I like mine? Maybe it's 1 inch and maybe a little farther. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm going to slide my ruler down. Now, one of the things you want to remember about this is you don't want to cut all the way to the very bottom. Let's see, I think I'm going to put this at about, yeah, 1.25 inches, a little over, right here. Now, I start from the bottom and work my way up, and the only reason I do that is so I don't go all the way to the bottom and cut through the entire project. I don't know if you have this trimmer, but if you do, just an FYI, it has indications on where your blade is. So it has this little crease right here that shows you the line of the blade, and then it has these little pointers on each side that shows you where the blade is this way. So you know where that cross section is, that's where your blade is. This piece is 1 inch long, so the center piece would be 1/2 inch, and I put my housing of my blade right at the very edge of my paper here. So it's at the very bottom, but that means that the blade is 1/2 inch from the bottom of my paper, and that's where you want it. So you're just going to push it right into the paper like that, and you're going to go up 1 inch. So you're just going to, let me get that straight, hold the paper firmly, and go up 1 inch like this, and just go back and forth to make sure that you've actually gone through all of the layers of your paper. And you can see here, there's a little hole there. Now, if your hole's not long enough, you can just use your scissors to make it a little longer, or put it back in your trimmer if you like. But we don't want to do that right now, because we want to make our tab before we decide to make this any other size than 1 inch. So I'm going to get rid of the trimmer, put that down there for now, and we're going to work on the side pieces. Now, the side pieces are these pieces here. You've got one side that's wider, and we have one side that's the narrow side, and we're going to be working with the wide side. And I make a piece of cardstock like this. Now this piece is 2 inches by 6.5, and at the 1/2 inch mark here I scored it. So I get my trimmer back out, and if you have a scoreboard, you could use a scoreboard. I just use my trimmer. I find it just faster unless I'm doing multiples of something. So I just put that here on 1/2 inch, and I use my stylus, and I just go down and make a crease like that. And that's going to give me a nice fold in my paper. And I'm just going to put some adhesive there. Get the adhesive to work properly. Now you could use score tape or maybe red tape if you like, to make this a little bit firmer. And it's going to go on the back. So see how I'm attaching that to the back right now, and even with the bottom? And that's what's going to fold over here. So you want to kind of make it nice and even with your bottom all the way, like that. Okay. Now on the other side of this, I have these cuts that I've made, and that's where the tab's going to be. And I could cut that tab out right now, but to save myself a little time, I usually don't do that. I usually add my paper first. So I will put this piece of paper right here, like this, and then we're going to cut our tab. So let me add that. And that's on the outside. Now, these two papers are interchangeable. I used this pattern, which is the larger leaf pattern here on this side, and then I chose to use the palm frond pattern, which is this one here, on the inside. And you can change it out if you like, it doesn't matter, one or the other. So now that I have that on there, make sure I got that nice and even, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut into the paper on one side, and then I'm going to cut it into the paper on the other side, like that. And that's the start of the tab. And then I'm just going to angle that down. And you want your tab angled for a reason. It works better getting it into the little slot. A little extra piece there. Right? And then I'm going to cut off any excess over paper there. And I might want to make that just a little smaller. There we go. These scissors are a little big. I usually work with smaller scissors, but this is what I have today. Right? So now we have our tab. Don't worry about the other side right now. I like to get the paper a little bit used to creating the shape I want. And I'm just going to make sure that the tab fits in there. Now see, mine's a little bit low. See how it's not even? So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take my scissors. And hopefully these larger scissors will work for this. Get them into the tab to make sure. Oh, there we go. Yep, it's not going all the way through the way I like. So I'm going to get my trimmer back out because these scissors are a little large. Put it back on my mark. Make sure I'm lined up the way I want to be. I'm going to go a little bit higher there. Okay, let's see if I can get that to fit nicely now. Something is stopping it. There we go. I don't know what it's stopping it. Let's see. A smaller pair of scissors. There. Let's see if that works now. There we are. Perfect. So you have your first tab ready. I need a little bit more adhesive on the back of that there, just to hold it down nicely. There we are. There you go. So now you've got your first tab piece on, and we can go ahead and start decorating that. And on this one, this is where I have the giraffes. And the giraffes are just going to fit on top of here. They go all the way to the very edge of your card here. And notice how long they are. When I first cut these out, I wanted to make sure that I had the entire family of giraffes and also their feet, because I really didn't know where on here this was going to look the nicest. And as I was working with the card, one thing I did realize is I didn't want my trees way up here because I didn't want the card too oversized. I wanted to keep it a little bit tighter than that, and that meant that I would have to then trim off the very bottom of this, which is fine. And I also trimmed a little bit off on the side too. So if you want to just take your scissors and just trim right next to the giraffe there on this side. So you have this nice clean edge, and if you want to, you can even follow the outline of the giraffe here on this side, just around the corner here like this. All right, so then all that's showing is this green, just like that. So that's where it's going to fit. When you add this piece, you want to be a little bit careful, because what you don't want to do is to get your adhesive up here. You want your adhesive to stay low. So I use this as my guide when I'm doing things like this. And one thing about this particular card is that the giraffes are going to fit here, and I'm going to be having some flowers and stuff over here because of the way we had to cut the giraffe out from that piece. You see his leg doesn't go all the way down, so we're going to cover that with some flowers so it's just not noticeable. And then we're going to be cutting this piece off as well, and of course that means you're going to be cutting the bottom of his feet off. And so we're going to be covering that up because we want to give the illusion that the feet are still there. So I am not hesitant about putting my adhesive on here because I know most of this piece is going to be covered up, and I'd rather be sure where the adhesive is than put it somewhere where I know it shouldn't be and then it's going to stick to the back. So we're just going to put some adhesive here, just like this. And I use quite a bit only because this bends and you want to make sure you have a lot of adhesive on there. And remember, this is already inked and ready to go, so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm just going to place him so it's right about there. So it's all the way to the edge here. This doesn't exceed the space at the top of the card too much. And then this piece here, I'm just going to flip it over and I'm going to trim to fit. just like that. So that's a discarded piece. And you have your family on now. And now we're going to do some flowers, and then we are going to add in another piece to cover up the bottom of their feet. So I'm going to get rid of this, and this piece is going to go here, see? So it just gives the illusion that the feet are back there somewhere. Where we don't know, but somewhere. So some adhesive back here. I'm going to cover that up like that. And you might want to make sure that the flowers on these icon images are facing up. So if you want to put that down like that. Make sure I get that nice and even here. And then I'm just going to cut this piece off to fit the back. And then if I need to trim a little bit more here, I can, and I'll do that right now, just so it's nice and even. So now you have the feet covered, and then we're going to just pick out some flowers. I've already cut some out here, and I'm just going to decide where I like them. It doesn't really matter if they stick over a little bit at the top. So just put a little adhesive here, and not over the tab. Remember not to put the tab. And I know they're going to go a little bit over this giraffe here because we want to hide that leg. And you just kind of decide where you'd like them. So I might like to stick them just a little bit under here, just to kind of make it look like it's more normal, if that's a word that we can use for that. Here we go. Okay.